Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we're continuing our look at the games of the great German player Richard Teichmann. We're taking a look today at a game he played in a match played in Glasgow in 1905 with William Evert Napier. And Napier, very short real chess playing career, but a very, very strong player. A little bit up and down, but could really play very well indeed. In this match, Teichmann was much superior. He won 5, lost 1 and drew 5. Well, it was very up and down from Napier, but in this game, Teichmann really played absolutely beautifully. It's a Berlin defense, and well, I think it really shows, very interestingly how the black players were getting to grips with the Berlin in those days, and the white players too. And actually, it's really pretty impressive when you consider this was played back in 1905. So let's have a look how that went. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop B5, and now the move we've all grown to hate and fear. Knight F6, the Berlin. Castle's knight takes E4, and Teichmann heads for the Berlin endgame. Knight D6, takes, D takes C5, knight F5, queen D8, king D8. Now, I mean, this opening was a big favourite of Harry Nelson Pillsbury. He played many games with it with quite a lot of success. To be honest, I think if Pillsbury had lived longer, maybe the Berlin would have become, the prime defence to 1 E4 much earlier than it did. Siegbert Tarrasch also played it a fair amount, and in his book for beginners, written about 1930, he says that basically this equalizes for black. So yeah, some things were known about the Berlin, but somehow never really became popular. The American player Bilguier played it quite a lot in the 1960s and 70s, but yeah, somehow didn't become popular before Kramnik played it against Kasparov. But I think this game, shows that it's not as easy as you might think. That the top players know it so well and play it so beautifully. But it's harder if you're making it up as you go along. So what is this position? Well, black's got the 2 bishops. Also, the white pawn on the white e pawn has been moved forward to e5, which gives black some quite nice dark squares around which he can entrench his pieces. On the downside, black's got this weakened queenside structure, although it's a pretty compact pawn mass, so you don't really notice it. Maybe more seriously, the black king can't castle, so it makes it hard for black to connect the 2 rooks. And very importantly as well, white's got this kingside pawn majority, and if white can get this kingside pawn majority going, then there's a real potential to squeeze black's pieces off the board. And this game of Teichmann against Napier is actually a textbook example of how that can be realized. The other thing that white's got, of course, also is a slight lead in development, and this gives white just a few possibilities to shape a little bit, the type of defensive structure that black can use. So rook d1 check played by Teichmann, and the idea of that is that there are some defences where black plays bishop d7 and king c8. By playing rook d1 check, you force black into a defensive scheme where the king goes to e8. Because if you go bishop d7, then we've got e6, fe, knight e5. And well, we're threatening to take on d7, and we're also threatening the fork on f7 as well. So rook d1 forces the king to e8, and then the move b3. And this is a nice idea, from Teichmann. What's it aiming for? Well, first of all, you're getting to play c4 in this position. You're putting the pawns on the opposite squared colour to your own bishop, and that's going to restrict the bishop that you don't have, which is the light squared bishop. So when the bishop moves to e6, for example, it's going to be looking at a wall of pawns like that. The other thing that b3 does, it allows the bishop to move to b2, and this is a decent square. It protects c5, gives maybe the knight on f3 some more freedom, and maybe gives white the possibility of going e6 and attacking g7. Also keeps control of the d4 square as well, which the black knight might aim at. Rather than develop the bishop to f4, you're actually keeping that square free for a white knight. And well, we're going to see how that's going to happen. Also, you're keeping f4 free for these the advance of these kingside pawns. Interesting moment now. H6 played by black, and this has been played a lot in modern times as well. There's all sorts of defensive schemes here. The engine's actually looking either knight e7 in general, just to reroute the knight to g6, wastes a lot of time but hard to exploit, or even looking for bishop b4. Just a nice little move, looking to try and maybe tempt white into weakening his pawn structure with a3, and then also looking for something like a5 to a4 as well. Loads and loads of possibilities. But h6 is pretty common. It covers the g5 square, so stops means that you can play bishop e6 without fearing knight g5. Also, maybe black might consider playing g5 in some eventualities, just to gain some kingside space. Now, the engines in general are tending to delay the development of the bishop on c1, but Teichmann played bishop b2, which is very reasonable, very natural. You're not going to criticize it too much, although it might not be the most from a hyper-accurate point of view. And now it gets very, very interesting, because the engines want to play this a5, looking to get in a4, and after a4, if we block that, just to stop the black rook from getting active, then the engines want to play h5. Yeah, you've played h6, and now they want to play h5. And what's the idea of this? The idea simply is to get the black rook on h8 as active as possible, and to activate it on the third rank. Actually, we've seen there's a very famous game of Alpha Zeros where it does exactly the same thing against Stockfish 8. And what's the point of all this? That black king on e8 is interfering with natural development of the rooks, to d8 and e8. So black's just looking for a different way of activating the rooks, and advancing the rook's pawns and activating the rook along the third rank is a pretty good way of doing that. I don't know if you've been following this series, but there was a game Alekhine against Teichmann. That was an exchange Rai Lopez, and for the white side then, again similar sort of pawn structure in the centre. The engines were this time for white, saying, well, push the rook's pawns, get some space, activate your rooks in that way. It's really quite striking to see this plan from the engines in this sort of structure, and then for each side in actual fact. But bishop e6 was played by Napier, and then knight c3 from Teichmann. And the idea of knight c3 is very nice. After bishop e7, of course, the engine's wanting a5 and h5, knight to e2. And this knight is coming round to f4 here to attack the bishop on e6. Now, what are the engines looking for? They're looking for a5. And if you do something like knight f4, then they want to play h5. And if you go g3, then they want to go g5. Takes and takes. And this is very interesting indeed. In principle, it is a good thing for white to get the bishop pair, and also to give black an extra weakness on here. But that doesn't mean that it's easy for white to do anything with this. And, well, with these pawns on g5 and h5, you've also got a threat of going a4. So white might well decide to block that. Then black's really keeping the white pieces at bay here, and it's not at all easy for black to white to make inroads into the black position. That's what the engines are trying to do, really. Sort of seizing a modicum of space and keeping the white pieces at bay. Napier, I think, to be honest, really struggles to find a proper plan here. He certainly doesn't come across the idea of advancing his rook's pawns, and plays the move rook d8. Knight f4 happens here, and now plays the move bishop c8. And this is actually a reasonably big mistake here, which Teichmann doesn't spot. There's a little sort of subplot in this position that Teichmann and Napier don't really spot. Teichmann only spots it quite a bit later, and that's actually to play the move knight h5. When you play the move knight h5, you stop black from gaining kingside territory. You also make it much less tempting to play moves like g6 or g5 because of knight f6. And, well, with the king stuck in the centre here, pretty tricky for black to get his other rook into play. And, well, with the kingside, with black's kingside structure sort of stymied there, white's ready to start advancing the pawns here. So, for example, rook g8, h3, bishop e6, g4, knight h4, knight e1, and we're looking for f4 to f5. Really dangerous for black, and not very easy to see what black should be doing in this position. The engines were trying g5, but then, well, something maybe like king h2, followed by king g3, and then you know, the knight will come in, and then f4 is coming in. Pretty dangerous for black here. So that was a really good move, but Teichmann doesn't see it. He plays, you know, very natural moves, but he's missing this move knight h5 at each point, and of course the engines are saying h5 quickly, h5 please, please, h5. So over the next, you know, 4 or 5 moves, that's a sort of a subplot. Rook g8, knight d2 from Teichmann, and well, you know, h5 is no longer possible, and Teichmann is looking to play his knight to e4. Again, very good idea from white here. Funnily enough, the engines find a way to prevent white from playing knight h5. They go knight h4 here, and if knight e4, then you go knight g6, and knight h5 allows bishop g4. And, well, from the tactical point of view, if you go h3 to stop bishop g4, the engines think the black still has time to stop knight h5, because after bishop g5 we go knight h5, and then there's bishop takes h3, and if gh, then bishop d2, rook d2, and knight f3 check. Aren't tactics wonderful? So knight h4 to g6, that's possible. You drive away that knight from f4, and after knight e2 you play h5 and you're safe again. You know, that's the magic engine solution. But b6, knight e4, knight e7 was Napier's idea, and now once again knight h5 would be very, very dangerous indeed. You can't go bishop g4 because of knight f6 check, takes. The bishop is defended, but after king f6 we go rook d8 check, and that's just curtains. But Teichmann played the very sensible c4, and now this was really, you know, really Napier's last chance for this, just to stabilize his position when the engines don't think that black's position is too bad. However, he played bishop f5, not really knowing what to do, I think. Bishop g4, forcing a weakness, and then bishop c8. And now Teichmann spotted the move knight fh5. And this is really, really difficult for black. You're not getting free now. So how on earth do you manage to get your pieces active as black? Well, he tried knight f5, but Teichmann avoided the exchange, knight e4. And now Teichmann just, with a lot of patience, very typical play from Teichmann now, just started rolling black back. You could go g4 immediately, but Teichmann just plays h3 first to support g4. c5 played, g4 now. Maybe Napier could have considered just giving up a pawn. It couldn't be worse than playing knight h4. And now again Teichmann could have played f4 in this position, but he played super calmly with king f2 and prepares to play f4 on the next move here. And after knight g6 he played f4 here. Now funnily enough, the engines are already showcasing Teichmann's final flourish. They suggest you could even go knight f6 already, with the idea of takes, and what are you threatening? Knight g7 check. If king f8 we go rook d8, and obviously if you go rook g7 then fg is very dangerous. But well, to be honest, I'd probably suspect you of cheating if you played a move like knight f6 immediately, because there's only one move that human players would play, that's f4, and after bishop c8 knight f6 is possible as well, but f5 is the only move that a human player would play. But after bishop b7, Teichmann now jumped in with knight f6. Very nice move indeed. Takes. And after knight e7, well, many ways to win. Teichmann played knight g7. And after rook g7, funnily enough, yeah, I'm quite surprised that fe wasn't played. I always start to wonder about a typo there, because, you know, that's really the very obvious human way of playing. Just win the exchange and you're completely winning, basically. Apparently Teichmann played f takes g7 and Napier resigned here. I mean, it is completely winning, of course. Black has to go knight g8, but okay, you know, I mean, there's still some work to be done for white. White needs to you know, play king g3 and start advancing the pawns, and yeah, just seems from a human point of view much less clear than f takes e7. But okay, that is apparently what Teichmann played, and well, Napier had seen enough and resigned. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that game. You know, one of the early Berlin endings, and really, I think, demonstrating very nicely, first of all, this theme of knight h5, and secondly, you know, the white ideal of just pushing that kingside pawn majority. And it just shows you that, you know, if black doesn't get the counterplay sorted out quickly, then these positions, well, really hold the seed of, you know, of disaster, really. And that's what happened to Napier after some really very nice control play from Teichmann. I mean, I hope you're enjoying these games of Teichmann. As I said, you know, really recognised by his peers as one of the strongest players of his generation, and you know, virtually unknown nowadays. You know, only the thinnest of thin books, you know, dedicated to his life and games, but some wonderful games in there. So well, going to carry on with that, and I hope you're going to enjoy that. If you liked it, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new book, Reengineering the Chess Classics, full of stuff like this, great games that you might, classic games that you might not have seen, and some that you have seen and that you know, we look at afresh and find amazing stuff in them. But otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching, and well, you know, hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.